I was 32 when I decided to take a road trip across America. I thought it would help me find inspiration for my photography. I started in Pine Ridge, a little town in the Rocky Mountains. It was peaceful there. I set up my tent that first night, surrounded by stars. Around midnight, I heard something. It sounded like footsteps. At first, I thought it was just the wind. But then, I heard it again, closer this time. My heart started racing. I peeked out of the tent and saw a figure. An old man stood a few feet away, whispering to the darkness. I froze. He turned and looked right at me. I wanted to speak, but my voice wouldn't come. Then, in an instant, he vanished. 1 second he was there, and the next, he was gone. I barely slept that night. The next day, I drove to a diner. I had breakfast and tried to shake off the weirdness from last night. But on the road, my radio started acting up. It was tuned to a station I couldn't find on the dial. The music playing was eerie. It sent shivers down my spine. Was I imagining it? I kept telling myself that. But then, the song just cut to static. I fiddled with the knobs, but nothing changed. My heart raced again. It felt really unsettling. One evening, I discovered an abandoned motel. The paint was peeling, and tall grass grew everywhere. I thought it would make for some cool shots. As I walked through the lobby, I noticed old photographs hanging on the wall. They showed people from long ago. Some faces looked familiar. I couldn't place them, but they reminded me of someone I knew. I picked up my camera but felt uneasy. Something about those pictures gave me the chills. Suddenly, I heard a rustling noise. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. I brushed it off, but that heaviness came back. Was it my tired imagination playing tricks? Maybe. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The strange experiences felt connected, but I couldn't put the pieces together. It left me questioning everything. Later that night, as I lay in my tent, I heard whispers again. They echoed just outside. The same voice from before. Chills ran down my spine. I had to know what was happening. I unzipped the tent and peered outside. It was dark, and no one was there. But then, I felt the old man's gaze on me again. I heard him ask, "Why are you here?" My heart dropped. I turned around. No one was there. What I experienced still haunts me. I wish I could understand it all. I can still hear that voice lingering in the back of my mind. Each moment felt like a piece of a puzzle I could never finish. I wonder if I'll ever find the answers. The next morning, I wanted to get back on the road. I felt restless and decided to head towards the mountains. I needed to clear my head. As I drove, the memories of last night clung to me like a shadow. I turned up the music, hoping it would drown out any lingering fears. Driving through the winding roads, I spotted a small trailhead. The sun was bright, and the trees swayed gently. I thought a short hike might help ease my mind. I parked and grabbed my camera, hoping to capture the scenery. I walked into the woods, light filtering through the leaves. As I hiked, I felt a strange flutter in my chest. The feeling I wasn't alone sparked again. I brushed it off. Surrounded by nature, I should have felt at peace, but unease simmered beneath the surface. I focused on taking photos of the vibrant wildflowers and the intricate patterns of the bark on the trees. But then I stumbled upon something. It was a clearing, and in the center was an old, weathered stone. It looked out of place. Almost as if it didn't belong there. I approached it cautiously. Etched into the stone were symbols I didn't recognize, spirals and jagged lines that seemed to wiggle and shift in the light. That was when I heard it, a soft whisper carried on the wind. My heart skipped. I spun around, expecting to see someone nearby, but there was nothing. Just trees and the rustling leaves. The whispers sounded familiar, echoing those I heard near the motel. "Why are you here?" The phrase repeated in my mind, along with the old man's gaze. The connection sent a chill down my spine. I knelt beside the stone, fingers trailing over the surface. As I pressed down on one of the symbols, I felt a warmth seep through my hand. It felt alive. Moments later, I yanked my hand back, startled by the sudden pulse of energy. I took a few steps back. My mind raced. Was this stone connected to the old man? To the whispers? I had no idea what I was touching. The wind picked up, swirling around me, carrying faint voices. I couldn't make out the words, but they wrapped around me like a fog. I realized I had to leave, but as I turned to make my way back, something caught my eye. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, watching. My breath hitched. It was the old man, just as I remembered him. He looked different now, almost more solid. He raised his hand and pointed towards the stone, his lips moving, but I couldn't hear him over the rushing wind. I stepped back, panic creeping in. I turned and ran, branches grabbing at my clothes as I dashed back down the trail. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I slammed the door shut, heart racing. I felt his gaze still lingering, watching me, searching. I couldn't shake the feeling. Why was he there? What did he want? As I pulled away, I noticed there was something in my hand, a small stone, similar to the one I had touched. My pulse quickened. I couldn't understand. But with it came a sense of urgency, the questions were piling up, and now I had to find answers. I drove straight to the nearest town, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows, and I felt the weight of the small stone in my pocket. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the old man's presence still hovering in my mind. I parked outside a diner with flickering lights and stepped inside, hoping for a moment of normalcy. The scent of coffee greeted me, but I was barely hungry. I sat at the counter and ordered a black coffee, trying to calm my racing thoughts. As I sipped, I looked around. The diner was nearly empty, except for a couple of truckers huddled in the corner, their voices low and conspiratorial. I overheard snippets of their conversation that caught my attention. They were discussing the mountains nearby, something about strange occurrences and missing hikers. My heart sank. I had no idea what I'd stumbled into. Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled, and a woman walked in, clearly agitated. She seemed to search the diner, her eyes scanning every corner. When she caught sight of me, she approached. "Are you okay?" she asked. There was concern in her eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I just had a weird experience in the woods," I admitted. "I found this stone." Her expression changed instantly. "You shouldn't have touched that stone," she said, cutting me off. "It doesn't belong to the living." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" "The old man, you saw him, right? He's not there to help. He's tied to those trees. He warns people off, but doesn't always succeed." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "The whispering, the stone, it's part of something much larger. People have gone missing for decades up there." "Missing?" I couldn't believe it. "Why hasn't anyone said anything?" She glanced quickly at the truckers. "You don't understand. People don't come back to talk about it. Once you engage with that stone, you get drawn into whatever it carries." Panic rose in my chest. "What can I do?" "Leave. Just get out of the area." "You were lucky to escape," she warned, her voice low and urgent. "But even luck runs out." Just then, I felt a chill in the air, and the lights flickered. The truckers looked at each other nervously. I glanced at the woman, but she was staring past me, her face pale. "That means it's coming," she whispered. Before I could respond, the truckers stood up abruptly, leaving cash on the counter as they rushed toward the door. I followed, confusion clouding my thoughts. But as I stepped outside, the fading sunlight was replaced by a thick fog rolling in, and I saw the old man standing at the edge of the parking lot, staring right at me. Fear coursed through me as I took a step back. I was still holding the stone, and suddenly it felt hot against my skin, pulsing with energy. I knew I had to make a choice. Do I face the old man to find out the truth, or do I run away and leave the mysteries behind me? That decision lingered in the air like the fog, heavy and uncertain. I stood frozen, staring at the old man. The shadows danced around him, almost alive. The fog thickened, making it hard to see past him, but I felt like there was something more menacing lurking behind the curtain of mist. My heart raced, each beat echoing the dread building inside me. "Is it you?" I finally managed to utter, my voice barely a whisper. "Are you the one who?" I hesitated, knowing all too well I might not want the answer. He didn't answer, but his gaze bore into me. The air crackled, heavy with unspoken threats. I wanted to drop the stone, but my fingers clung to it as if it might offer protection. Then, the woman from the diner burst through the door. "No. You can't be here," she shouted, rushing toward me. I was momentarily relieved to see a familiar face, but her frantic energy only heightened my anxiety. "Get away from him!" she yelled, pointing at the old man. She pulled at my arm. "We need to leave now. We don't have time to argue." My mind raced as I took in her words. But no buts. "I wish you had listened." At that moment, the old man took a step toward us, a slow, deliberate movement that felt like a menacing promise. The fog swirled around him, and I saw tendrils of darkness stretching from his figure, reaching for me, as if he were untethered from the world. The woman yanked me back toward the diner. "We need to go inside. We can't let him get you." I wanted to resist, to confront the figure that had caused me so much chaos, but her grip was firm. I stumbled backward, still clutching the stone. It felt even hotter now, almost burning against my palm. Just as we reached the door, a loud crash echoed from the depths of the fog. I turned to look. My heart fell when I saw movement in the mist. Shadows danced wildly like phantoms emerging from dark spaces. My instinct screamed at me to run. "Inside!" she insisted again, shoving the door open. We hurried in, panting, and I slammed the door shut behind us. The diner felt like an inadequate fortress, but it was better than being out there in the fog. I looked around. The truckers had vanished, leaving only a lingering tension in the air. "What was that?" I asked, trembling. "The fog. It's not just fog. It's alive," she replied, her eyes wide. "It carries whispers. They say if the fog surrounds you too long, you can't come back." "Not truly. What do we do?" I asked, the weight of the stone now a burden I couldn't ignore. She looked around, her brow furrowing. "We need to figure out how to break whatever hold that stone has on you. It's a beacon, and it's drawing them closer." I felt a chill wash over me. "Them?" "Yes," she said, biting her lip. "We need to find a way to stop it before it's too late." If the fog closes in further. Before she could finish, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. And then, from outside, I heard the low murmurs, voices mingling with the wind. Just then, something crashed against the diner window, making us jump. That's when I saw it, an outline of figures moving just beyond the glass, fog swirling around them. The figures outside pressed closer, their outlines shifting in the fog like something out of a nightmare. I could barely make out their features, but I felt their eyes on me, hungry and searching. "What are they?" I whispered, dread coiling in my stomach. "They're drawn by the stone. They want it. They want you," she replied, her voice tense with urgency. I stepped back, the table behind me pressing into my back. The stone felt heavier, almost vibrating in my hand like it knew it was being hunted. I had to get rid of it, but the thought of letting it go terrified me. Another crash against the window stole my attention. The impact rattled the glass, making me jump. I risked a glance again. The figures were closer now, their faces obscured by the fog but their intentions clear. "Stay away from the windows," the woman shouted, her breath quickening. "We need to barricade the door." "If they get inside, what do you mean, if?" Panic surged in my voice. "We can't let them in. They're not human. They can't be." As she started to move furniture, I forced myself to focus. I had to think. A noise, soft yet insistent, whispered from the stone in my hand, like a gentle call reaching through the chaos. I was drawn to it, but I resisted. I couldn't let it control me. "Help me," she urged, her eyes darting to the front door as it rattled against an unseen force. "We need to keep them out." I pushed the weight of the stone deep in my pocket and leaped forward. Together, we shoved a table against the door just as it lunged again. Wood scraped against the floor, and I could hear desperate voices now. They were getting louder, filling the diner with a creeping hysteria. "What do they want?" I shouted, my voice rising with panic. "They want the stone. It's a key to something we can't understand. If they get it," she trailed off, her face pale with fear. The lights flickered again, a mere stutter, but everything felt loose now. As I glanced back toward the window, I saw one of the figures, tall, almost skeletal, press up against the glass. Its hollow eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "Look away." She yanked my shoulder, breaking my trance. But something about that figure, those eyes, made me freeze. The whispers swelled, a cacophony of distorted pleas and taunts. I couldn't shake the feeling that I recognized that figure. The urge to listen battled with my desire to escape. "Now!" she shouted, pushing me toward the back of the diner. Instinct kicked in, and I stumbled back into the kitchen. It was dim, cramped, and filled with the smell of stale grease. I caught my breath, staring at her. What had I gotten us into? "There has to be a way to destroy it," I gasped. She shook her head. "I don't know. But if we don't figure it out soon." Suddenly, the power went out, plunging us into darkness. My heart raced. I could feel their presence, pressing against the walls of the diner, closing in like the mist that surrounded them. Then, I heard it. A soft rustle from behind me, something moving in the shadows. The darkness felt alive, and I realized we weren't alone. "Who's back there?" I managed, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. I turned slowly, a new wave of fear washing over me, just as the shadow detached itself from the wall. I squinted into the shadowy depths of the kitchen. My heart raced, each pounding beat drumming in my ears like a warning bell. "Who's there?" I put on a brave front, though my voice trembled. Silence hung thick in the air, heavy and unnerving. I took a cautious step back, bumping into the metal table that clanged against the floor. My nerves were on heightened alert. The rustling continued, a soft shuffling, then an edge of metal scraped against tile. "Stop moving!" I shouted, feeling a surge of anger mix with terror. The kitchen felt too small, the walls closing in around me. Then, out of the gloom, something emerged. A small figure no taller than a child stepped into the faint light filtering from the cracked window. It was hunched over, its skin gray and loose. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. "Hey! Step back!" I warned, trying to sound assertive, but it came out as a squeak. To my surprise, the figure didn't attack. Instead, it paused and looked up, its face obscured by shadow. The whispers from the stone in my pocket grew louder, as if the sound was calling to this creature. I shook my head to clear my thoughts. This was too much. Just then, I heard a crash from the main dining area, and I could see splintered wood from the barricaded door. The woman rushed in, panic in her eyes. "They're coming. We need to leave now." "What about that thing?" I pointed frantically at the figure. She looked back, and disbelief crossed her features. No. Get away from it. The creature took a hesitant step forward, its hand stretching out slowly. I wanted to back away, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. It's not attacking, I murmured, confusion clouding my judgment. Don't you understand? It's luring you in. They're all connected to the stone. Before I could process her words, the shadowy figure lunged forward. I gasped, my instinct kicking in. I grabbed the metal tray beside me and swung it with all my might. It struck the figure but passed right through, as if it were made of smoke. I can't. I yelled, retreating. I needed to keep the stone, but it felt like a curse now. The woman pushed me back with force, urgency driving her actions. We need to find a way out. She turned to the rear exit, dragging me along. The whispers pulsed in my head like a beating drum. Suddenly, I stumbled upon something in the kitchen, something glinting in the gloom. I bent down, heart racing as I revealed an old, rusted knife. Maybe I could use it to protect myself, or even to shred the stone if I had to. Grab it. Let us go. She urged, glancing back as the sounds of desperate scratching grew louder from the front. I snatched the knife, my fingers trembling. But then I heard another sound, a deeper growl, coming from behind us. The air thickened with something malevolent. I hesitated, staring down at the knife, caught between the urge to fight and the pull of something dark in the air. As the growls intensified, a glimpse of another figure appeared at the doorway, taller and more powerful than the rest. I felt its eyes burning into me. And then I knew. My choice had to be made quickly. But just as I turned to run, I realized the stone, hidden away in my pocket, was pulling me back. I couldn't at that moment decide if it was courage or madness that kept my feet planted. The whispers from the stone turned frantic, urging something dark within me to act. I fought against its pull as the woman dragged me toward the rear exit, the old knife heavy in my hand. Keep moving. Don't look back. She shouted, her voice cutting through the haze of fear. The intensity in her eyes pushed me forward as I stumbled after her. I could sense the growling shadow gaining ground, the air heavy with its presence. The kitchen door flew open with a loud creak, and cold night air rushed in. I hesitated for just a second, glancing back at the shadowy figure that lurked behind us. It wasn't just watching, it was hungry. My heart thudded in my chest, louder than the growls now echoing around me. We can't go out that way. I urged, panic rising in my throat. We have to. She insisted. They're closing in on the front. Come on. Before I could protest further, she lunged through the rear exit, pulling me outside. We stumbled into the small yard, the moon casting eerie shadows that danced across the grass. I looked around, searching for a place to hide, but the growls sounded closer. The woman turned to me, her face pale under the moonlight. We need to get to my car. It's parked a little ways down the road. I nodded, following her as we darted around the edge of the building, the wind carrying the whispers from the stone. What is that thing? I panted, trying to catch my breath. It's only one of them. There are more, she replied sharply, glancing back toward the kitchen as if expecting a swarm to follow. They're all connected to the stone like shadows. If we don't get away, they'll take us. The word take sent chills through me. I tightened my grip on the knife, my hand sweaty against the rusted handle. I had to keep it together. This wasn't the time to lose it. Just as we reached the street, the growls transformed into a cacophony of desperate voices. I froze. There were more of them, creeping closer. Hurry! The woman shouted, dragging me forward. We sprinted down the cracked pavement, the glow of streetlights flickering above us. I could feel the tension creeping back into my muscles. The stone was still tugging at me, a sinister anchor weighing me down. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of movement down an alley to our right. My breath hitched in my chest. Did you see that? I pointed, heart racing. Now is not the time. She snapped, but I couldn't look away. Something gave away my secret fear, the desire to flee. Please. Just a second. I begged, my voice trembling. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of light reflecting off something metallic. I stumbled closer, my curiosity bigger than my fear, drawn to whatever it was. Then everything went dark. The world around me blurred, and I stumbled, thrown completely off balance. A chilling silence replaced the growls, and the whispers stopped like the stone was quieting me. I felt myself being pulled back, disoriented, and in that moment, I realized I was no longer in control. I blinked, trying to shake off the darkness. The world came into focus, but it was different. The cold night air was replaced by a stifling heat that wrapped around me like a thick blanket. Confusion hit me like a wave. I was no longer outside. I was in a small, dimly lit room. I could hardly make out the shapes surrounding me. I took a few steps back, only to bump against something solid, a wall. The air felt charged, heavy and thick, like static before a storm. I strained to listen for the growls, the woman's frantic voice, anything familiar, but all I heard was silence. Hello. I called out, my voice sounding small and echoing. No response came. I looked around, searching for a way out. There was a wooden table in the center of the room, and on it lay an array of strange objects, jars filled with murky liquids, small figurines that seemed to dance in the low light, and a worn-out book propped open. I approached the table cautiously. One of the jars caught my attention. It shimmered softly, reflecting a ghostly light. My fingers itched to reach out and grab it. Something about it pulled me closer, like the whispers from the stone had returned and were coaxing me from the shadows. But then I remembered the knife. I felt it still clutched in my hand, its rusted metal grounding me. I forced myself back from the table, yearning to remember how I had ended up here. Just then, a door creaked open behind me. I spun around, heart racing. A figure stepped into the room, a tall man with wild hair and eyes frozen in a glare. I stepped backward instinctively, knife raised. What are you doing here? He demanded, a low, gravelly voice filled with authority. You shouldn't have come. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I stuttered, trying to grasp the situation, but he cut me off. Did the stone call to you? He asked, his tone shifting, curiosity replacing hostility. Stone. I repeated, trying to piece everything together. What stone? What are you talking about? He stepped closer, and I felt a mixture of dread and curiosity as he gestured to a shadow in the corner. My eyes followed, and I nearly stumbled back when I saw it. There, resting against the wall, was an intricately carved stone, glowing faintly and pulsating like a heartbeat. Stay away from it, he warned sharply, a flicker of fear crossing his face. It doesn't want you like you think. It wants something else. A chill shot down my spine. My heart raced as I realized this wasn't over. I had entered a deeper layer of whatever nightmare was unfolding. The stone suddenly pulsed violently in response to my fear, pulling at me, wrenching something deeper within. Get to the others, he urged, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You must find out before it's too late. I wanted to ask who the others were, but the urgency in his voice left me no time. I took a step back, trying to connect the dots, but the shadows in the corners began to swirl. The atmosphere shifted again, as if the air itself had turned cold. Suddenly, screams echoed from outside the door. My pulse quickened. What is happening? I shouted. Run! He ordered, pushing me toward the exit. It's coming for you. Without thinking, I bolted through the door. I stumbled into a narrow hallway filled with more shadows and whispers that felt alive. The growls returned, louder and more desperate than before. I had to find a way out, away from whatever darkness awaited me. But when I looked ahead, the shadows seemed to pulse with life, and I knew this battle was far from over. As I moved down the hallway, I felt a lurking presence at my back. They were waking up. Whatever connections that stone had forged were still dangerously in play, and I was about to find out just how deep this nightmare ran. I sprinted down the hallway, my breath coming in gasps. Shadows flickered along the walls, twisting and stretching as if reaching for me. I couldn't let them catch me. I had to get out. Ahead, the hallway forked into two paths. To the left, a dim glow flickered, while the right held a deeper darkness that felt suffocating. I hesitated for a split second. The screams were growing louder, echoing from the left. Fear propelled me forward, and I chose the path illuminated by the faint light. As I neared the source, I spotted a large, open room filled with more strange objects, tapestries hanging at odd angles and furniture made from twisted metal. In the center stood a group of figures, their backs to me, huddled around a large, intricately carved table. I hesitated, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Then I recognized one of them. It was the woman from my earlier nightmare, her hair wild and eyes clouded. She seemed lost in a trance, murmuring against the backdrop of the screams, and gesturing to something on the table. I stepped closer, curiosity overriding caution. "What are you doing?" I called out, my voice trembling. She turned abruptly, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of recognition and horror. "You shouldn't be here," she shouted, and in that moment, the others turned as well. Their expressions were a mix of fear and desperation, like I had stumbled into the eye of a storm. "Stay back!" One man yelled, raising a stick adorned with strange symbols toward me. "You don't understand." "What do you mean?" I shouted, panic bubbling in my chest. "I just want to know what is happening." The woman stepped closer. "The stone is awakening. It's chosen you. You have to make a choice." "What choice?" I asked, confusion swirling in my mind. Before she could answer, the shadows behind me thickened, spilling into the room like a living creature. I felt its cold breath against my back, a presence that sent waves of dread through me. I spun around, but all I saw was a mass of darkness, writhing and pulsing. "It won't stop until it has you," she screamed, her voice urgent, cutting through the chaos. I felt the weight of their whispers tantalizing and terrifying. I turned back to the table, where ancient symbols danced in my vision. It felt like a riddle I had to solve, but I was grasping at straws. "Focus!" the man with the stick shouted. "You need to choose." Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the room. The screams turned into wails, confusing my mind. I wasn't sure if I was losing myself or if the shadows around me were somehow winning. In that moment of darkness, a thought pierced through the noise: what if the choice was not mine alone? What if I wasn't meant to decide at all? As I fumbled through the pitch black, a glimmer of light flickered in the distance. That's when I saw it, a figure standing just beyond the darkness, shrouded in shadow, but unmistakably alive. Someone was watching, waiting. I took a cautious step toward the figure, my heart pounding relentlessly in my chest. The chaos around me faded as curiosity took the lead. I squinted, the light growing brighter, and I realized it was the old man. His familiar gaze was still piercing, but now there was an urgency behind it that I hadn't seen before. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice clear as a bell in the surrounding chaos. "What do you want?" A shiver ran down my spine. The whispers surged again, swirling around me, urging me to answer. I felt the stone in my pocket growing warmer, almost pulsating with energy. "I want to know the truth," I said, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. "I want to understand." "Understanding," he replied with a hint of sadness, "comes with a cost." The shadows roared behind me, and the figures at the table looked alarmed, murmuring amongst themselves. I glanced over my shoulder at the chaos encroaching, the darkness swirling like a storm, threatening to swallow us whole. "We don't have time." One of the figures cried out. We need to react now. You must decide before it consumes everything. My mind raced. The whispers, the stone, the old man, they were all intertwined in a web deeper than I could comprehend. Decide what? I called, desperation creeping into my voice. Whether you will become one with the darkness or bring the light that can break the grip it has on this place, he answered, breathless urgency filling his tone. You have the power, but it lies within you to unleash it. I stared at him, the weight of his words pressing down on me. The familiar dread surged within me, reminding me of how restless yet enchanted I felt since finding that stone, that powerful key. My fingers brushed the smooth surface in my pocket. It seemed to beckon me. Then I noticed a faint glow emanating from the old man. You, I faltered, suddenly understanding. You're part of this too. Aren't you? He nodded, his features drawn tight. I am the guardian of this cycle, yet I am bound to its darkness. You have a choice that can alter what has been set in motion. Before I could respond, a great gust of wind swept through the room, and the figures began to fade like mist. Panic surged. I couldn't let this opportunity slip through my fingers. What do I need to do? I shouted above the din. Embrace what is within you. His voice echoed. You hold the balance. The stone is not just a key, but it is also a choice. Release it, and you may set us all free. Or hold steadfast, and surrender to the shadows forever. With that clarity hitting me like a lightning bolt, I could feel the stone vibrating fiercely in my pocket. The walls seemed to close in, shadows clawing at me, calculating and predatory. I could almost hear them whispering threats laced with promises. No time to waste. I clenched the knife and felt its cool metal against my palm, anchoring myself. I choose. I yelled, channeling everything I had into those words. I choose light. With a swift movement, I pulled the stone from my pocket and raised it high. It glowed brighter, illuminating the room. The shadows screeched, retreating from the light as it enveloped me like a warm embrace. I felt the connection surge through every inch of me. The old man's eyes widened with astonishment as I was filled with a power I had never known before. The stone pulsed with energy, transforming the darkness around me into radiant forms, the familiar figures of those I once glimpsed in faint silhouettes. What have you done? The old man whispered, all mixing with fear. I've chosen to free you. I shouted, voice echoing against the walls like a war cry, clinging to hope, clinging to light. And then everything erupted. The shadows screamed, retreating further until they vanished into the far corners of the vast unknown. I felt the energy surge around me, like a storm breaking, the figures coalescing into an exquisite dance of light and color, as if they were being released from a long-held torment. Just as quickly as it began, the light dimmed, leaving stillness in its wake. The old man stood before me, now appearing weak yet liberated. You have done what we could not, he said, almost reverently. But in freeing us, you may have unleashed a deeper question. What do you mean? I asked, my breath heavy with exhaustion and confusion. There are forces beyond our understanding, he replied, gaze drifting. And with this light, you've only cracked the surface. The cost of your choice has yet to unfold. Perhaps I hadn't truly escaped, or perhaps the choice had only just begun. I felt a mix of hope and fear cascade through me. A new path, laden with questions, lay ahead. As I turned, shadows roamed around the periphery, lingering as a reminder, where reality nudged against the supernatural. I wondered if I really had set them free or if they had merely retreated, biding their time. Either way, the journey was far from over. I chose light, but I didn't know if the dark had willingly surrendered. I moved forward, my heart echoing the freedom found in the struggle, yet lingering doubts shadowed my steps. Questions remained, gnawing at the edges, as the true nature of my choice settled softly in my chest. I felt the weight of the stone still pulling, a mystery barely solved. And as the echoes of the old man faded into the night, I knew I was free, yet forever bound to the enigma of what could unfold next. I took a breath, determined to face whatever awaited.